Okay, so we talked a lot about personality already. What personality is, what are the different theories behind personality. Pinag-usapan natin yung other influences from different fields like, biological influences and cultural influences. Ngayon, pag-usapan naman natin yung assessment of personality. Paano ba exactly mini-measure yung personality natin? And there are different methods in measuring personality. Pwedeng interviews, pwedeng projective tests, behavioral assessment, and pwedeng inventories. No? So, iba't iba ng pag-conduct. May mga advantages and disadvantages itong mga methods na ito. So, let's go through them one by one. Mabilis lang naman din siya. Una is yung interview. Yung interview is mostly for siguro mga psychoanalysts, pero pwede rin silang magamit sa iba't ibang perspective, siguro humanistic perspective, dahil mas kailangan mong makuha yung internal processes ng mga tao. Yung behaviorist, more on observation, pero ito, you can conduct this usually pagka humanistic yung psychologist or yung therapist. No? But the problem with this, of course, the interviews that I'm talking about here are unstructured mostly. No, unstructured interviews kasi you want to have a conversation. Basically, magkaroon ka ng conversation with your participant. Ang magiging challenge dito is the halo effect. No? Basically, cognitive bias siya wherein you want to have an initial positive impression. So, medyo magkakaroon ng ganung kind of bias whenever you're talking to that other person. Ang advantage naman nito is magkakaroon ka ng depth. Kaya very applicable to sa humanistic therapists or humanistic psychologists. Malalim yung makukuha mo sa mga tao. Ang daming. Hindi mo siya makukuha sa surveys lang. Ito makukuha mo yung mga internal processes that are going on, yung mga thoughts, feelings, yung mga rational nila, beliefs, those things, makikita mo siya sa interview. And that's one way to assess personality. And the other one is projective tests. So yung hindi niyo pala kita yung yan. Projective tests, no? An example of this is the Rorschach ink blot test, classic na example sa siguro pop media or whatever. And yung thematic apperception test. I haven't actually gone through a Rorschach ink blot test. Medyo outdated actually ito. Pero this is still part of the topic. Sorry, hindi nyo pala kita yung no? But it just says here, yung Rorschach ink blot test, individuals are given a set of symmetrical ink blots. Tapos, they will be asked what they see. Yun lang yun. Ang problema nito is yung scientific validity as well as yung reliability ng mga ganitong kinds of tests. Kasi, if there was a test that is subjective, ito talaga yun. Parang defining characteristic niya is subjective siya. But that doesn't necessarily mean na you won't get an information from that. Diba? Kasi kahit na subjective siya, okay, you will still get an idea of what the person is thinking about, ano yung mga ideas niya or mga beliefs niya, yung mga, what the feelings are of that person. Siguro yung context niya, makikita mo rin. And another example is the thematic apperception test. Ito na-try ko siya. No? I think, hindi ako sure, pero I think in Ateneo, there's a thematic apperception test during the entrance exam. So in here, participants will be asked to create stories about ambiguous pictures. I remember I asked my wife, ano to? Anong nakikita mo dito? Tapos sabi niya, parang yung guy walang pakialam. Sabi ko, parang hindi ko naman nakita na parang walang pakialam yung guy. Parang nakita ko naman na parang gusto niyang ayusin. Parang gumagano'n pa ako. So, depende siya sa context. So, useful pa rin naman yung information. But, again, yung scientific validity and reliability would be an issue dito sa particular projective test na to. Kasi, you want to uncover the unconscious thoughts. So, very psychoanalytic, di ba? Unconscious. But hindi siya ganun ka-valid or even reliable. No? So, useful, but, reliability and validity, different. So, another one is direct observation. Ayan, biglang magdiding-ding yung mga tenga nila Watson at Skinner, Pavlov, no, mga behaviorists. So ito, basically you just directly observe kung ano yung ginagawa. The outward expression. Sorry, hindi nyo na makita yung words. Ayan. The outward expression of the thoughts and feelings of that person, makikita nyo siya through behavior. So, it's parang very straightforward. Okay? So, pwede kayong gumamit ng rating scales dito wherein you adjust or you assign a specific number for a particular construct, and then meron kang predefined scale, i-evaluate mo yung presence, intensity, or quality of specific traits or behaviors for assessing personality. Parang, because itong time na, itong behavior na to ginawa niya to, therefore, baka meron siyang ganitong kind of personality. Okay? Another technique that you use in direct observation is frequency count. You just literally count or tally the number of times a particular behavior occurs. So, for example, ilang beses niya sinabi yung ganitong word, and therefore, maybe this is important, no, or relevant to his life. Yan. So, yan, direct observation. Problems with these assessments include yung observer effect, of course, no? When a person's behavior is affected by being watched, alam natin yan, di ba? And observer bias also, it can be controlled, but it can be controlled by having multiple observers. Kasi yung assessment mo, yung observation mo would maybe differ from other observers. So you might want to have an inter-rater reliability. Parang ganun, no? So that's direct observation. Another one is personality inventory. I think that's the last one, the fourth one. Yung personality inventory, yan very commonly used. No? There's a whole field on assessment, in fact. No? Personality inventory, standardized self-report questionnaires. Okay, they designed to assess various aspects. No? So we know this a lot. Yung MBTI, napupunta na nga siya sa POP spectrum ng. It categorizes individuals into 16 personality types. Ito yung mga ENFJ, ISTP, INTP, mga ganun, no? I think I'm an ENFJ, yung last kong take nito. Pero, nagbabago siya, no? Nagbago. From ENFJ ako, tapos, I think ESTJ, naging ESTJ, parang ganun. Something like that, no? And then, of course, yung Big Five, yung Ocean, or yung Neo-Pi-R. Kaya siya Neo-Pi-R because it's neuroticism, extroversion, and openness originally. And then, nadagdag na lang yung agreeableness and conscientiousness. No? So, Neo-Pi-R stands for neuroticism, extroversion, openness, personality inventory, revised. Okay? So, yan yung isa pang personality inventory na widely used. No? Also, the MMPI-2, a comprehensive extensive research psychometric test. No? Ang ginagawa naman ito is nag-assess ng psychopathology and for clinical diagnosis nito. Despite their utility and despite being heavily used, meron pa rin siyang mga challenges. No? For example, pwedeng magkaroon ng fake responses. I don't know why you take an inventory, personality inventory, tapos mag-fake ka lang ng response. Parang para saan pa, di ba? Because some people want to appear more desirable. I remember doing this with my friends. Tapos parang medyo nag-doubt yung ibang tao dun sa results ng isa kasi parang hindi ikaw yan. Parang kasi madali siyang ma-fake yung response. Pero again, as I was saying, parang bakit ka pa ba't ka pa personality inventory kung i-fake mo lang din naman, no? So these are some of the challenges ng personality inventories. I also wanna put in some psychopill here. So, meron din tayong panukat ng pagkataong Pilipino. This is just one. Meron ding iba pa eh. Meron ding iba pang mga personality inventory sa Philippine context. Kasi ito very Western to eh. The participants, yung other tests, no, even the whole book, the whole chapter, very Western siya. So, again, what you can do is look at the concepts, apply it in our context, no? Search for existing inventories, for example, that can be applied to our context. So, for example, ito, yung PPP, panukat ng pagkataong Pilipino, yung mga personality dimensions niya, like pagka maalalahanin, pagka madaldal, pagka magalang, pagka maramdamin, pagka masunurin, pagka matulungin, pagka maunawain, and pagka palakaibigan. Yan. So, yun yung mga dimensions of personality naman sa Philippine context. No? So, pwede nyo rin yung tingnan. It's an interesting personality inventory as well. Okay? So, just a summary noong mga pinag-usapan natin for this particular video, may interviews, most likely used by psychoanalysts in humanistic perspective kasi nga very in-depth yung interview, ano? And then yung projective tests, medyo psychoanalysts talaga siya kasi, you know, it's very subjective. Behavior assessment, of course, behaviorist, mga social cognitive therapists also kasi they also take into account the environment, mga reinforcers, right? So, kasama din yan doon sa mga gumagamit ng behavioral assessments. But of course, you can have a mixture of these naman, especially depending on the research that you're taking up. No? And yung mga trait theorists naman yung gumagamit mostly ng personality inventories. No? So, just a summary, pinag-usapan natin. In the previous video, yung biology and yung cultural influences of personality. Right? Yung pinag-usapan natin yung twin studies, adoption studies. We also know that the 50% rate of heritability across cultures, right? And then in this video, pinag-usapan natin yung assessment, no? Interviews, projective tests, behavioral assessments, personality inventories. Yan. So what? Yan. So what now? What naman ngayon? Well, assessments are very useful. Okay? Assessments are very useful. But so, assessment is good, but judgment is not. Yan yung gusto kong sabihin. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong mga certain personalities that we can observe sa people, but that doesn't necessarily mean na yan na yung buong ikaw at yan na ikaw forever. Okay? Personality can change. You can change it, pero medyo kailangan lang ng malaking effort. But so it's used for a purpose. Personality assessment, to understand, not to judge. Yun yung isa ko pang gusto sabihin. Personality assessments are used to understand, not to judge people. Hindi mo parang, ay, ano yan, introvert yan, hindi ko na natin siya invite. Whereas, introvert siya, so what can we do to maybe make them feel more comfortable and accepted and tolerated? Diba? Kasi Filipino culture, mas tolerating tayo of different ideas. So, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the whole series. Meron pala yung last video in integration. So, I hope you learned something for this video and I'll see you again on the next video.